for a change. Why don't you just take out your gun and shoot him?
Makes too much noise.
Come on, you can have one. A donut once in a while will not kill you. I'm a doctor.
I can't. I just found out my talking scale has been lying to me.
Remember Empty Nest? Saturday nights on NBC, Dr. Harry Weston trying to hold his household together, Carol in full chaos mode, Barbara doing whatever Barbara wanted, Dreyfuss basically in charge, and Charlie wandering in like locks were just a fun design. Empty Nest hit NBC in 1988, spun out of the Golden Girls universe, and ran for 7 seasons and 170 episodes. For its first 3 seasons, it sat comfortably in the top 10, which tells you it was doing a lot more than just filling time. And once you look past the cozy sitcom surface, this show gets a lot weirder than you remember. We're talking a failed backdoor pilot, cast shakeups, behind-the-scenes clashes, and dog swaps. Stick around for number 1 because it brings the whole series full circle in the most fitting way possible. Before we jump in, hit like, subscribe, and share this video with the friend who believes Dreyfuss was the best actor on that set. Now, let's get into the countdown. Number 15. They blew up the whole show and kept the house. Empty Nest failed, got rebuilt from the studs, and came back to life like nothing happened. Only, most people don't remember that part. Here's what happened. In May 1987, the Season 2 Golden Girls finale, Empty Nest, tried to launch a spin-off by introducing the Corliss family, neighbors we'd never heard of who suddenly became the main characters. George and Renee Corliss, played by Paul Dooley and Rita Moreno, were dealing with empty nest syndrome after their daughter left for college. There was also Renee's brother, Chuck, played by Jeffrey Lewis, and their noisy neighbor, Oliver, played by David Leisure, rounding out what was supposed to be the new sitcom family. No Westons, no Dreyfuss. America took one look and collectively said,
Hated this. They hated this. I went home, my husband said, and it was, oh!
Even the cast knew this was a disaster. Rita Moreno, who won an Oscar, an Emmy, a Grammy, and a Tony, later called it a very, very bad show. When an EGOT winner says the show is bad, that's not a good sign.
And what happened is that Susan Harris, the head writer, got frightfully ill during that 1 week we were putting the pilot together, and couldn't do rewrites, and it really, really, really needed rewrites badly.
The production was such chaos that by the time they started filming, the script had been rewritten so many times that Moreno couldn't even remember her first line. Think about that. Rita Moreno, a seasoned professional who's worked with everyone from Elvis to Spielberg, was stumbling through her dialogue because nobody could decide what this show was supposed to be.
Every day they kept changing my character to the extent that by the time we got to do it in front of an audience, I couldn't remember line 1 because the attitudes had changed so many times.
Worse, the chemistry between Dooley and Moreno was non-existent, and everyone could tell the Golden Girls themselves looked uncomfortable with the whole thing. But here's where it gets interesting. NBC didn't completely give up. They took the basic concept, scrapped everything else, and in 1988 launched Empty Nest. No S this time, with Richard Mulligan, Dinah Manoff, and Kristy McNichol. They kept David Leisure, but completely rewrote his character as Charlie, an annoying cruise ship worker. Same chaos energy, new name, fresh start like he was in sitcom Witness Protection. They kept the house too, just handed it over to the Westons like nothing awkward had happened there before. The lesson? Sometimes the idea isn't wrong, but the execution is so spectacularly bad that you have to blow everything up and start over. Number 14, NBC's Saturday Night Secret Weapon. By the early 90s, Empty Nest had become part of a full-blown little TV ecosystem, and one of the biggest flexes came with Hurricane Saturday. On November 9, 1991, NBC sent the same storm through all 3 connected sitcoms in a single night. In the Golden Girls two-parter, The Monkey Show, the ladies hunkered down as it rolled in.
And I have some good news. The stage manager just told me the hurricane is breaking up and we're only going to have to stay here a few more hours. Well, I'm going to go tell everybody.
Don't you dare. First we sell them candy. Come on, everybody.
Then, over on Empty Nest, the Westons dealt with their own hurricane drama in an episode called Windy. And over on Nurses, Be Gone with the Wind had the hospital staff handling all the storm's casualties, with Rose Nyland and Laverne Todd both making appearances along the way. Same storm, same props, same weather machines, 3 different casts. One very long night for the production crew. It was essentially channel surfing where the hurricane followed you everywhere. This was one of those crossover gimmicks that actually sounded cool instead of desperate, turning NBC's Saturday lineup into one big shared universe event before TV executives started using phrases like cinematic universe to justify everything. It worked because all three shows were genuinely connected. Same city, same universe, same creator. And NBC had spent years building that Saturday block into something audiences actually cared about. For a stretch in the early 90s, Saturday nights on NBC were basically wall-to-wall Miami sitcom territory. Empty Nest was part of that world, a staple that helped define the night for years.
Carol, guess what? I just heard on the radio, Hurricane Heidi's changed direction and it's headed straight for us.
Hey, did you guys hear the news about the hurricane? It's going to hit in an hour. They said to stock up on food.
Which is kind of wild when you think about where it started. Number 13, it borrowed its bones from a British sitcom. Long before Empty Nest became part of NBC's Miami sitcom empire, its basic setup had already been done, with a British accent and probably more tea. The show's concept was loosely inspired by the UK sitcom Father Dear Father, which ran from 1968 to 1973 and followed Patrick Glover, a divorced father raising two daughters while sharing the house with an enormous St. Bernard named H.G., as in H.G. Wells. Now, to be clear, Empty Nest didn't copy it beat for beat. Harry Weston was a widowed pediatrician in Miami, not a British novelist in Hampstead, and his daughters were adults with enough baggage to fill Dreyfuss's dog bed twice over. But the skeleton of the idea is close enough to make you do a double take. One father, two daughters, one oversized dog, and a household built around generational chaos.
Daddy, I don't like this. The woman is 2/3 your age.
Hi, all. Feed me.
So if Empty Nest ever felt a little older than some of the other late 80s sitcoms around it, that may be why. Underneath the NBC polish, the wisecracks, and all that Miami crossover energy, there was a British sitcom blueprint hiding in plain sight. Number 12, B. Arthur versus the Gun. B. Arthur had a few famously hard lines, and apparently one of them was chewing gum. It was Park Overall who told the story publicly, and Dinah Manoff backed her up on record. So this one has receipts from two different cast members. The short version is that B. Arthur had a well-known set-wide no gum policy, and she enforced it. David Leisure said she had a radar that extended about 100 feet, and she would walk over to you and make you spit it out. Dinah Manoff, however, decided to test that policy personally twice. The first time was during a Golden Girls crossover where Dinah showed up to B's set chewing gum. She heard about the gum thing and wanted to see if it was real. It was. B told her to spit it out, and Dinah obliged. Round 1 to B. But then, B came over to the Empty Nest set for a guest appearance, and Dinah had a piece of gum in her mouth again. B told her to spit it out, same as before. This time Dinah smiled and said, no, this was her set. B stormed off. And the thing is, Dinah has made it clear this wasn't some accidental run-in. She did it on purpose. She knew exactly what she was doing both times, which makes this less of a diva story and more of a long-running two-act bit that played out across two different sets over the course of a sitcom universe. A sitcom grudge match fought entirely with chewing gum. Number 11. Why Barbara really left. Kristy McNichol, who played Barbara, left Empty Nest midway through its run, and the reason was serious, though she kept it private at the time. So viewers just saw Barbara disappear and a previously off-screen third sister, Emily, suddenly step into the family picture. Lisa Riefel joined the cast in 1992 to play Emily Weston, the other daughter who'd supposedly been away at college all this time. Viewers were not amused.
Come on now, dawg. Come on, man.
It was always going to be a tough sell. Riefel herself admitted the situation was weird, and David Leisure later described it as the impossible job. Emily lasted 13 episodes before the show quietly sent her back to college and moved on. Years later, McNichol revealed the reason for her departure was bipolar disorder. She did return for the 1995 series finale, and that episode stands as her last on-screen acting performance.
Go upstairs, go into my room, and you would never even hear it, huh?
Well, I could hear you on the intercom in your bedroom.
What intercom?
The one I just decided to install.
She did some voice work after that, lending her voice to the animated series Extreme Ghostbusters in 1997 and Invasion America in 1998, but she never appeared on camera again. She officially retired from acting in 2001. So Barbara's exit wasn't about contract drama or a storyline shakeup. It was Kristy McNichol stepping away for her mental health. And in hindsight, that makes her brief return at the very end feel a lot more meaningful. Number 10, the guest star bench was stacked. For a show people really don't talk about anymore, Empty Nest had a surprisingly ridiculous guest star lineup.
Hey, Billy! How you doing?
Great, Dr. Weston. Except it's Bill now.
Oh, of course, yeah.
We're talking Phil Hartman, Matthew Perry, Joey Lawrence, Garth Brooks, Jane Lynch, and Mayim Bialik, all passing through Community Medical Center like this was perfectly normal. Future household names, quietly collected by a cozy family sitcom about a widowed pediatrician and his giant dog. That gives the show one of those great retro TV qualities, where you're watching an old episode and suddenly blurting out, "Wait, is that?" before the opening scene is even over. When these people showed up on Empty Nest, most of them weren't yet the version of themselves you know. They were just talented faces on the way to bigger pop culture immortality. Mayim Bialik is the perfect example. She appeared in 2 episodes as a patient named Lori Kincaid.
You poor unpopular thing. And I swear, I'm gonna kill the next person who tells me that no one asked Morgan Fairchild to her senior prom.
Years before Blossom, years before The Big Bang Theory. And here's the kicker. Both Empty Nest and Blossom were Whit Thomas Harris productions, and Bialik herself later said those Empty Nest appearances were essentially her audition for Blossom. That little guest spot was quietly a screen test the whole time. Empty Nest guest book ended up looking a lot fancier in hindsight than anyone realized at the time. Number 9, Dreyfuss was really a 3-dog operation. Every great sitcom family needs a scene stealer, and on Empty Nest, that honor belonged to Dreyfuss, the giant, lovable dog who somehow managed to look smarter than half the humans in the room.
Oh, my Dreyfuss, my sweet boy, oh, Dreyfuss.
The dog most viewers knew as Dreyfuss was played primarily by Bear, a St. Bernard Golden Retriever mix. So yes, that big shaggy face was real, and yes, he looked exactly like the kind of dog who'd take over your couch, your schedule, and eventually your emotional well-being. But Bear wasn't doing it alone. His brother Julio often doubled for him in more energetic scenes because Julio was the higher action dog. In other words, when Dreyfuss needed to do more than just stand there looking adorable and mildly judgmental, Julio was the one stepping in to handle business. And here's the little fun detail that makes this even better. Julio is actually the dog seen running around Richard Mulligan in the opening credits of the early seasons. So, if you remember Harry Weston getting yanked around by Dreyfuss in that intro, you were mostly watching the stunt brother, not the main dog actor. So the truth is, Dreyfuss wasn't one canine star. He was basically a furry tag team.
You know, Dreyfuss, now that the operation's all over and you're all better, I can tell you that I was so scared.
Bear handled the main role, Julio handled the action, and in later seasons, Bear's son, Bingo, joined the operation too. Together they pulled off one of the most memorable sitcom dogs of the era, which, let's be honest, is more than most human guest stars managed. Number 8, Joey Zuzu helped him survive the reboot. When Empty Nest was rebuilt after that disastrous Golden Girls pilot, one actor made it through the demolition, David Leisure, and that wasn't an accident. By the time the retooled series launched in 1988, Leisure was already nationally recognizable as Joey Zuzu.
Hi, I'm Joey Zuzu. Here, in my factory, I equip these eye marks with millions of standard features, like a breakfast nook.
The smirking commercial liar who sold cars with the confidence of a man who thought shame was optional. That character had made him a genuine pop culture presence, and NBC knew it. According to multiple sources, including the show's own history, Empty Nest was conceived in part as a star vehicle for Leisure specifically because Joey Zuzu had already made him a household name. In other words, Charlie Dietz may have been born in sitcom land, but Joey Zuzu got him in the door. And the timing worked out pretty well for everybody. Leisure brought instant recognition to a brand new show still finding its footing, and Empty Nest gave Joey Zuzu somewhere to go once the car commercials wound down.
Come on, Harry, I just got my cereal mushed up the way I like it. Let me stay. I can be sensitive when I have to.
All right, but I mean it, Charlie. One smart crack, you're out of here.
No problem.
By the time the ad stopped running, Charlie Dietz had already taken over. Same guy, same smirk, just a different set of lies. Quick pause. Who was your favorite Empty Nest character? Let us know in the comments, and while you're down there, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss our next deep dive into retro TV. Number 7, it spawned its own hospital show. By 1991, Empty Nest had done something kind of amazing. It had already gone from failed Golden Girls experiment to actual hit, and now NBC looked at it and said, you know what this needs? More charts, more scrubs, more stressed out people in fluorescent lighting. That's how Nurses happened. The spinoff launched September 14, 1991, and followed the staff at Community Medical Center, the same hospital where Dr. Harry Weston worked on Empty Nest. Same building, different floor, completely different chaos. The core cast was a solid ensemble. strong-willed head nurse Andy Rowland keeping everyone in line, sarcastic Texas divorcee Sandy Miller always on the hunt for a man, wide-eyed newcomer Julie Milbury, who was somehow both the least experienced and most competent person in the room, and Latin nurse Gina Cuevas, who never stopped talking about her fictional homeland, San Pequeño. Throw in an arrogant doctor, a wisecracking orderly named Paco, and a male nurse nobody quite trusted, and you had the makings of a pretty entertaining workplace comedy. The show went through its share of changes over 3 seasons. Cash shuffles, a white-collar criminal doing court-ordered community service at the hospital, and Lonnie Anderson arriving in the final season as the new administrator. It never matched Empty Nest ratings, but ran 68 episodes before wrapping in 1994. For a show that almost didn't exist, it was doing a pretty good impression of a TV empire. Number 6. Susan Harris basically recast her own family tree. Richard Mulligan and Dinah Manoff weren't strangers when they showed up on Empty Nest together. They'd already worked together for Susan Harris before, on her earlier show Soap. And what they'd been to each other there is where it gets fun. On Soap, Mulligan played Burt Campbell, while Manoff played Elaine Lefkowitz, the spoiled mob boss's daughter who married Burt's stepson, Danny.
Well, you see, Ma, it's,
Danny and I are getting married.
In other words, they weren't father and daughter at all. They were stepfather-in-law and daughter-in-law, which is exactly the kind of detail that makes Soap the beautiful disaster it was. So Susan Harris basically took 2 actors from one family circus, moved them into a new sitcom, and reassigned the relationship like she was reorganizing seating at Thanksgiving. Number 5. Same song, different mood. Most sitcoms change a cast member or a haircut. Empty Nest changed the whole mood of its opening song. The theme Life Goes On was written by John Bettis and George Tipton and performed by Billy Vera. And before you gloss over those names, John Bettis is the same lyricist who wrote Michael Jackson's Human Nature, Madonna's Crazy for You, and Whitney Houston's One Moment in Time. So the guy writing the Empty Nest theme song was not exactly a lightweight. The original arrangement had a slower, softer, more reflective feel, which fit the show's early setup pretty well. But as the show settled in, Empty Nest got lighter, broader, and more sitcom-y, so the theme evolved right along with it. Starting in season 4, later seasons used a faster, brighter arrangement of Life Goes On that sounded a lot more upbeat, less middle-aged loneliness in Miami, and more, well, here comes Charlie again to ruin everybody's afternoon. Same song, same core, slightly different vibe once the years kicked in. Number 4. Park Overall refused to play a punchline. When Park Overall showed up on Empty Nest as Nurse Laverne Todd, she could have easily been written as one more lazy sitcom stereotype. The loud southern woman with the accent everybody laughs at before she's even finished the sentence. Park Overall wasn't having that. In interviews, she was open about the fact that she spent a significant chunk of her time on the show fighting to protect the character's dignity. The writers, in her view, didn't have a southern frame of reference and had a habit of reaching for the easy joke. She pushed back hard. By her own admission, she made things difficult, but she also made sure Laverne wasn't reduced to a punchline. And that resistance wasn't just personal preference. Press coverage from the time noted that Laverne had drawn criticism as a Southern stereotype, which makes Overall's behind-the-scenes battles feel a lot more like quality control than actor ego. She fought to keep Laverne grounded in something real, and it worked. In lesser hands, Laverne Todd could have been a cartoon, all twang and no substance. Instead, she came across as someone you'd actually want in your corner. Sharp, dependable, and fully capable of verbally body-slamming you before lunch, if you gave her a reason to. That's not an accident. That's what happens when an actor refuses to let a character become a cheap joke. Number 3. Richard Mulligan had a Disney side hustle. In 1988, Richard Mulligan launched Empty Nest and quietly took on a second gig at the same time, doing voiceover work for Disney. That same year, Mulligan voiced Einstein, the lovable Great Dane in Disney's animated film Oliver & Company.
Oh boy! Don't pile.
And the company he was keeping wasn't exactly modest. The cast included Billy Joel, Bette Midler, Cheech Marin, Dom DeLuise, and Joey Lawrence. Mulligan held his own, and critics actually singled out his vocal performance as one of the film's highlights. Einstein is named ironically because the character is actually pretty dim-witted, kind, loyal, enthusiastic, but not exactly working with a full set of tools. Originally, the writers had planned 2 big action sequences for Einstein, but both got cut during production and handed to another character. So Mulligan ended up voicing a lovable Great Dane who was both dumber and smaller than originally intended. The film pulled in over $53 million at the domestic box office and eventually found a second life as a cult classic on home video. Number 2, A Quiet End. Empty Nest went out with a slow fade, and in some ways, it never really stopped fading. One by one, the shows around it disappeared. The Golden Girls ended in 1992, Nurses wrapped in 1994, and suddenly Empty Nest was the last one standing. No programming block, no lead-in, just a show finishing out its run on its own. The ratings kept sliding, and after 7 seasons, it quietly wrapped in June 1995. But the quiet didn't stop there. Unlike The Golden Girls, which has been in near constant syndication and streaming ever since, Empty Nest essentially disappeared. There's never been an official DVD release. It's not on any major streaming platform. For a lot of people, it might as well have never existed. Part of that is just bad luck. Richard Mulligan passed away in 2000. Kristy McNichol retired from acting. The cast scattered. There was no Betty White keeping the memory alive in the cultural conversation for decades after it ended. A show that started as a failed backdoor pilot, reinvented itself into a hit, built a whole little TV universe around itself, and then quietly vanished, taking most of its stories with it. Number 1. Sophia came back and took over the final years. By the time Empty Nest was heading into its final stretch, it pulled off one last big crossover move. After The Golden Palace was canceled, Estelle Getty brought Sophia Petrillo back to the NBC sitcom universe by joining Empty Nest for its final 2 seasons. On the show, the explanation was that Sophia had moved back into the nearby Shady Pines retirement home, which, because that's how sitcom geography works, suddenly placed her close enough to be in Harry Weston's life on a regular basis. And once Sophia was back, she wasn't just making cute little guest appearances. She became a major part of the show's final era.
Stretch, as in you're the tallest player?
No, Stretch is I'm the only one who can still touch her knee.
That meant Empty Nest ended not just as the Harry Weston family sitcom people started with, but as something even more connected to the Golden Girls world than it had ever been before, which is kind of the perfect ending for the whole series. After all the rewrites, cast changes, schedule moves, and reinventions, Empty Nest basically ended by reconnecting itself to the show that gave it life in the first place. And there you have it. Shocking facts about Empty Nest. Which one surprised you the most? Which one did we miss? Let us know in the comments. Hit like if this brought back a few Saturday night memories. Subscribe for more trips back to the shows we all grew up on. Until next time, this is Remember When.